Hello, I'm Christina, and if you're new here, I am a booth owner. I have a vintage antique booth at Plaza Antiques and Collectibles Mall in Lincoln Park, Michigan, and I am expanding, and it's a pretty big expansion. And I have a whole bunch of videos showing you the process, whether you are a current booth owner, you want to become a new booth owner, or you may be expanding yourself. This might be helpful. I want to start off by saying a thank you to all of you. Last week's video was tough, but I felt it was really important to share. If you haven't seen the video, I'll put a link right here so you can check it out. But as a booth owner, things aren't always easy. It was so nice to read all of your comments rooting me on. The good news is the tide has changed, which it kind of ebbs and flows as a small business owner. Remember in my last video how I said I kind of was waiting for like a sign of encouragement that this was the right thing that I should be doing, and let me just tell you, it has happened in spades. I mentioned at the end of last video, I found some pieces. I've also found some curbside rescues that I'm making over. That is one of them. And friends have just come out of the woodwork to help. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Like I said, I really feel this is something I was meant to do, and I wasn't too discouraged. In the moment, totally, yes, but we're all back on track. And a big booth tour and reveal is coming soon, but I am still working, so give me just a little bit of grace on that. This week, I wanna talk about tips, tricks, what I'm learning as I'm going through the process. It's been a while since I've moved a booth space or gotten a new one. And I'm gonna tell you what's working, what's not working, and I hope you can apply it to your booth. Also, if you're a booth owner and you have tips and tricks that you wanna share, please put them in the comments down below. First thing I did, which I'm pretty big about doing, is making a plan. I have a notebook and I at least was planning things out. I wasn't really sure what was staying as far as structures and what was going, at least not 100% until the previous owner moved out. So things were kind of up in the air. Instead of thinking about structure, I decided to think about displays. I knew I could have a certain number of groupings, kind of sort of, in that space, and I wanted to think about the big groupings and with what I had, what I could do. So I of course searched Pinterest and I checked some of my boards. I also went through all of my inventory to get some inspiration. And I kind of roughed out some ideas. Now, if you're thinking about display as a booth owner, you can do color, you can do a theme. You can kind of think of the area as someone's home and think about who that person is. Like, they love to work and this is their little shed area and there's a whole bunch of tools and they're older and they kind of have a quirky sense of humor, and then all of those items can go into that area. So that's where I started. I worked with what I had and I kind of roughed some things out, so I had some possibilities, so I wasn't just going in blind. Going along the same lines is, once the booth owner got out of her space, I decided, instead of like doing everything all at once in my booth space, which I like to do a lot of the time, I'm gonna work with some of the things that were left behind. She left some walls, so that's good. She also left some brick, like wall coverings, which are really kind of cool. I'm gonna see if I can work those in. She also had painted a chalkboard on one area of a wall. So if you arrive in your booth space and there are some things that the previous person has left behind or are from the mall itself, try to work with the items you have instead of like buying everything new, because more expenses is just gonna put you more in the hole, and that's not the whole point of all of this. Another thing, and I learned this over and over and over again, is to expect surprises. Remember, I said there was a structure that was left behind. There were some issues with the structure that we were not expecting. So when I got all ready to come in and do my thing, I kind of had to wait until we could address the structural issues before I could proceed and before I could figure out how things might have to change so we had enough support. So even though you're thinking about what might happen, also keep it in your mind that things might change. Another unexpected surprise was that there was a lot of residue from carpet tape. and it had been there a really long time. In fact, there were still like strands from the carpet that were attached to the floor, and it was a sticky and gooey mess. So I had to deal with that, and that took extra time. That also was totally out of my wheelhouse. I don't use carpet tape. I've never removed it off of a floor, so I had to get some assistance with that. Another really important thing that I try to do is, even though you're blocking out a whole bunch of time for your new booth space or your expansion, you need to make time for the things that are important, you know, your family. And so we were looking for really creative ways to do that. Luckily, my mom is also going to be getting a booth in my new space, and so she was with me a whole bunch of the time, but I was worried about spending time with my daughter. I kind of made a deal that, like, if she called or she needed me, I would stop. I would do what I had to do later. We also had dinner in my booth every evening. My mom would bring her back from school to my booth, and we actually were eating dinner on one of the tables in my booth. And that way we could sit, we could chat. She would help me for a little bit, and then my mom would take her home to finish up on the homework. But that break, one, was really important for me. I needed to refuel, but it's also so important to not completely close out all of your family members and to give yourself little breaks. Along the same lines is, you want to make sure you are taking care of yourself. My daughter was teasing me because everything in the fridge was like extra protein. Like the waffles even have protein in them, Mom. Even the wraps had protein in them. I was stocking up on protein. I was making sure I had healthy snacks. I wanted to make sure I was staying hydrated. All of those things, because you don't want to get sick. You don't want to get exhausted. You want to have enough fuel in your body so you can do what has to be done. You also want to make sure you're getting enough sleep. So taking care of your body, eating and drinking is important, but sleep is really important too. But I went home early to make sure to get that extra sleep. Another thing I also did is I put like a fun thing in between all of this work. So it might sound crazy. Like, I actually took a break from working on my booth to do something I really wanted to do. Let me show you my project that I worked on. Every time I go thrifting, I find those little singular items like this cup here. Sometimes, sure, you can look real hard and find a match. Like these blue cups, as I looked through, I found an entire set. But other times, there's just one little thing, like this creamer dish without a sugar. They're perfectly good, but they really have no purpose. And a lot of people are not just going to want to buy something that is lonely and all by itself. So that is how I came up with my most recent idea. My goal is to take all these little misfits home and turn them into something that can make them useful. And that's how the idea for Misfit Candles was born. I purchased a natural soy candle making kit on Amazon. You can check the link in the description box below for the soy wax that I used. I did not like the wicks that I used, so I'm not going to put the link below. I would recommend getting wicks that have like an adhesive, so they're going to stay in place better than these. Now, this is not a candle making video. I'm sure you can find a great one on YouTube, but I wanted to share with you this idea because maybe it will inspire you to think outside the box with some of those thrifted finds or some of those lonely thrifted items that you have seen. I put a candle in each one. I added a scent, and I've now added them to my booth at Plaza Antiques and Collectibles Mall in Lincoln Park, Michigan. I'm also going to make a sign for the Misfit Candles, kind of talking about how important it is for me to save beautiful vintage things and give them a new purpose. And it was something I always wanted to try. I'm not sure if they're going to sell or not, but I will keep you updated. Let's get back to all of the tips and all of the lessons that I have been relearning lately. One really big one is when you have a project that is this size and scale, is staying on task. There are so many things. And if you're like me, I love the decorating and the making pretty and the hanging and the grouping and putting things together. I don't always like the hauling and the building, but those are the things that really need to happen first. My plan was this: get in as many of the big pieces priced into the space. Even if they weren't in position, get them there. And then remember those groupings that I talked about? I put like objects together. So I decided to do in one of my spaces, like an office. All of the office things, I just kind of piled in one spot. So I had them. I could spend time making things pretty later, but the most important thing was getting the items in. The mall was open while I was working, so shoppers were going through. And even though there was stuff around, I actually was making sales in my new space because the items were in and priced. And customers were even looking through, you know, what was on the table, even though it wasn't pretty. It was so important for me to get those things in because you don't want to lose out on sales while you are setting up, if at all possible. Obviously, if you have a really small booth space, this might be difficult, but it probably won't take you as long to set up either. Another lesson I learned is be flexible. Remember, I talked about like the booth structure and the issues that I had to address with that. Part of the space I'm sharing with a neighbor. So we had to make sure that everything would be secure between both of us before I could just proceed. And so although it was hard, I really tried to stay flexible. I also tried to like over-plan my time so that I was not feeling rushed on doing things. And frankly, that's been my mindset all along. It'll be done when it's done. Most of you know my theory about a booth being done though. It really is never done, but good enough is gonna happen, but I'm not gonna force things. And I think that's really important. Get your big ticket items in, get some stuff set up, and then work at it and be flexible. Another thing I learned is don't take those ridiculous, silly shortcuts. All of the booth owners at the mall had a really good laugh on me. I had a metal bookcase, kind of like what you'd use for storage in a garage. You know those things aren't sturdy. You have to screw them into a wall. And I was planning on doing that, but I thought, well, I have some time. I'll just load it up with what's going to be on it and I'll put these rolly wheels on it. I mean, I'm just going to move it like a foot. I can just carefully roll it back in, right? You know what happened. It was a big mess. Nothing was damaged and everyone kind of had a good laugh. And I learned my lesson. You can't do those silly shortcuts. You have to really think things out because I ended up spending so much more time cleaning up the mess if I would have just done it right the first time. And the good and the bad is gonna happen. So make sure you're expecting it. Everything is not gonna go smooth. Things are gonna happen. So be prepared. Like I said, that kind of goes along with being flexible. The next thing was something I was horribly guilty of. I didn't take my own advice. I kind of realized this afterwards. And I don't know, does this happen to you? You go to your booth, you make it absolutely beautiful, and you get home and you're like, I didn't take a darn picture. It happens to me all the time. I really get caught up in the booth design and the display. Taking pictures and taking video is hard for me. And, you know, I do this. I'm on YouTube, so I know I need to do more of this, but you should too. You should document it. You should be posting to social media. If you need help with social media, you can check out this video here, but sharing it, building the excitement, showing what cool things are coming in. All of those things are gonna help you make more money in your booth space. So don't do like I did. Make sure to take the photos and the video. Finally, and perhaps the most important thing, and I'm so blessed to have this, is to surround yourself with good people. You know, get some people to help you, or make sure if you're working in your booth on a certain day when, you know, certain people are there that are going to be positive reinforcers, you want that. You don't need the Debbie Downers. You need the support while you're doing this. I was so lucky when we were hanging back up my sign on top of my big display piece, like a bunch of the dealers at Plaza Antiques who were kind of around the corner came in and just helped. Like they offered help, like, oh, to make it straight, do this. It wasn't bad advice. It was much needed. I thought I could just pull it up there and it would be straight. And I was on a huge ladder. So to have some people on the ground, it was so appreciated. And the sign looks great. They also had some good ideas that I didn't think about. I am really lucky at Plaza Antiques because the dealers at the mall are seriously the best. I don't think I would be where I am today from where I started, because I don't think I would have lasted as a booth owner without them. So getting some help, getting some advice, tips and tricks, it really does make a difference. Surround yourself with the good people that are going to help you, because this is not an easy task. I still have more to do in my booth. I promise I will keep you all updated, but thank you so very much for showing up, for watching, for writing all of the positive comments, and stay tuned, because very soon there's going to be a booth reveal with a booth tour. I'll get out there to salvage, repurpose, and create. And I'm going to get back to work.